And you are live.
All right, thank you. I'll call the public safety meeting to order. I believe all members are current except for Councilman Swirsky, correct, Sarah?
That is correct.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Would you like a roll call?
Yeah, go ahead, thanks.
Sure. Kamer,
Aye.
Samples,
Aye.
Swirsky, Malik,
Aye.
McKittrick.
Aye.
All committee members are present except for Swirsky.
Thank you, Sarah. I appreciate that. So we'll move forward. Our first order of business is to approve the minutes from last week's meeting, please.
Motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
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 Anybody opposed? All right, moving forward. We do have three old pieces on our agenda and one new piece. So our first piece is the one we've been discussing in regards to Councilwoman Samples, her piece of legislation. I'm not sure if there's any discussion. I'll look at the hands raised function. I'll also call on the Councilwoman in case she's got any comments in regards to her piece of legislation.
Continue to take time.
All right, we'll continue to take time on that. We'll move on to the next piece is the other tow piece of legislation offered by myself and Councilman Fusco. And I do know Councilman Malik, just to let the rest of the members of council know, he did send out an email to me with a couple concerns and maybe changes and things that he might want to discuss. So if he wants to discuss those today, he's more than welcome to. If he wants to share that email, he can, but we'll move forward and discuss this piece if anybody has any questions or comments, or we can continue taking time. So I'll go to the hand raise function first and committee members first. And it is Councilman Malik first. Councilman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And yeah, I just would like to just kind of mention the different aspects that I shared with you and Mr. Fusco, and certainly if others have thoughts or ideas, you know, perhaps we can just see how people feel. The first was just in the language in section K about the review of districts. I think that we should just make sure that it's clear that the first review will take place in the year 2022. And then every 5 years after. So I think you mentioned that you were amenable to that. Mm-hmm. Then the hours of access. I think that Mr. Lombardo raised a great point that, you know, folks should probably have some kind of time before and after work. And so, you know, whether it's 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. or what have you, it would also be helpful to kind of, I don't know if you have perspective from the towing companies on kind of, you know, what their thoughts were, but would love to hear, you know, some of the thoughts about the hours.
Okay, sure. Yeah, I'll make a brief comment about that. I think there's mixed opinions about that. I think some of the companies that I spoke to, they're in favor of keeping the longer hours in the evening, obviously with citizens that are working until 6 or 7 p.m. Then there was just a few, maybe just one that wanted to decrease the hours. So that's where the hours came up with. So yeah, but I'm open to, I think we're all open to seeing if we can go back to expand those hours too. So people that are on their way to work in the morning or actually late in the evening can make sure they can retrieve their vehicle. I also just to say this at this point is I would encourage if you haven't, some of the members of council to reach out to these companies, these current companies, and just have that conversation with them. Please do, because that opens that dialogue up.
I thank you for the additional info, Mr. Chair. If you have the contact info, or maybe Ms. Viviano can send it out, would definitely love to reach out and speak with some of them. The next point was owning and renting the tow lots, and I know that we talked about this a little bit at the last meeting. Obviously, I think, definitely understand the rationale for making sure that we have continuity of service. But at the same time, we don't want to necessarily place significant limitations on the companies that can participate, especially since, part of the point of this deep dive is to make sure that we do expand access. And I think that, whether Ms. Coleman Crane or others would probably be knocked out of participating on this. I don't know whether maybe it's also helpful to talk to the law department, but, one of the things that I was thinking is, if we could maybe require at least folks to have something in their lease that there's a window of time, like maybe 90 days before the notice that they would have before being evicted or something like that. So at least there would be time for the city to come in and make, to ensure that there is a continuity of service. So that's one of the ones that I wanted to raise, if there are any comments from other folks.
Okay. Yeah, I'll just make a comment before I look to see if anybody else wants to chime in. Just to give you an update, I have been, along with Fusco, meeting with the law department via Zoom and emails in regards to that topic right there. So owning versus renting and even leasing. So. Okay.
And I know that some of the other places, like I know Ms. Coleman Crane has mentioned that ODOT and other highway patrol are, they rely on her as well. And so part of me thinks if that's not a significant concern to them, then we should at least be able to find some way of mitigating that concern. But at the same time, I think the continuity of service point is valid. And then the fees, I think that I definitely understand the need to update some of the fees. The one fee that I think is somewhat of a concern is the daily storage fee, because that can add up, over time. So I think right now it's at $15, and the proposal is to take it to $20. I think, I think I'm supportive of increasing most of the fees, but I think that fee, if we could look at keeping that at 15, I think that might make sense.
All right, that sounds good. Okay.
I don't know if obviously I'm not the chair, but I don't know if others want to weigh in on the fees.
Yeah, sure. What I'll do is I'll just go to the hands raised function. I do have a few folks, Councilman Malik, that do have their hands raised. I don't know if they're in regards to some of your comments, but I'll just call on people. We'll continue the discussion, because I think last week we really had a great discussion, and this is good moving forward. So I'll call on Councilman Lombardo. I see your hand up next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good comments, Councilman Malik. But continuing on with the legislation, just to clear up some of my confusion, on page 2, all the towing companies, is that what's referred to as Exhibit 1, as it's stated down below there, section C of section 70.52? Is that chart there, is that what's called Exhibit 1?
I believe so, but I do know we have Sean Bowman that's on with us too, and I don't want to speak for the law department or anything that I might speak out of turn about, but I do believe that's Exhibit 1.
All right, well, okay, that's one of my questions. The second one is same section, but item D. When we talk about the times, are these times that the city of Akron would like, or are these the times that the towing companies, I don't know how to put it, are these the towing company hours that we're almost dictating to them what they should be? Or is this just something, when it comes to city of Akron vehicles, that these hours are supposed to be available for people that have been towed? I don't know if that makes any sense.
No, that makes sense. If I had to say what my opinion is basically we as council, we dictate in this ordinance what we require from the tow company. So if we require them, obviously currently it's 7 a.m. until 9 p.m. The potential change that we're proposing is 8 a.m. until 6 p.m. Obviously, we're the ones that tell the companies how to operate.
Okay, so but they could stay open longer.
Mhm.
You know, like if it, I don't know how I'm sure they don't have a special section just for the, you know, the city of Akron impounded vehicles, but they could stay open longer if they wanted.
Yes,
Okay,
and they're
Okay.
usually on call also for appointments, 24 hours a day.
right, okay. And I'm still going back to item G. And as far as the towing companies, that they would have to own their tow company, they would have to own the lot. I'm still not agreeing with that. Continuing on, I'd like to see it go down to 4 years, as I said last week. I think 3 years is too short, 5 is too long, and 4 would get us in the middle. And then that would be it for my questions. But I would like to see somehow of some map, like what, you know, we know this all as District 1 through District 7, but I guess I would want to see a city of Akron map visually to, you know, kind of get the concept of, as we try to move towards what's fair and equitable. I guess I would like to see the streets named or something on the map, just to look at that. Thank you.
I get
Councilman-
Sarah sends you one of these big ones right here in the mail. No, seriously, it's a nice big map. It really is detailed. It has all the districts. So if you want one that big, hopefully ask Sarah and she'll send you that in the mail. It's a good map. It's a real good map.
And
Well, yeah,
Councilman
again,
Kramer, oh, sorry.
No, I was just gonna
Councilman
say, I
Cameron.
mean, as we try to make this fair and equitable, I think that seeing the district areas is necessary. Thank you.
No problem, Councilman. And hopefully Sarah will get you one of these maps. It really is detailed. The maps that are printed on just a regular piece of paper, I don't think they do justice. So this is a really good map. And also, Councilman, I know you have one of these companies that are in your ward. So I would encourage you, hopefully Sarah will send out email addresses and phone numbers to all the companies. And I would encourage you to, you know, maybe reach out and talk to the business owners out there.
Okay, thank you.
All right, good suggestions. Let's see, hands raised function. Back to that. Councilwoman Amobian.
Councilwoman, you're still on mute.
Thank you. I couldn't find the right spot. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. But I think my comments go along with what you've heard from the previous council members. The ownership of the storage land parcel, I think that should hopefully be optional rental. And I like the fact that they can add some type of time frame that would give them enough time if they have to find another location to accommodate and notify people 90 days, 6 months, whatever the case may be in their contract if they're not the owner. And some of the fees, I realize that things have changed and everything has gone up, but some of the fees, if we can look at those, and because some of them are pretty steep, I think. I too would like to have one of those maps, but Sarah or somebody could just put on my desk in my office and I can certainly come down and get it. I think those are the main issues that we've addressed. So I'm glad for this continuing discussion. Are we planning to do anything in terms of vote on this, or we're still discussing?
No, Councilwoman, and thank you for bringing that up. And I'll tell all council members, as long as it's okay with our president of council, I'm okay continuing to take time. So hopefully we all can work together and move forward in the right direction. And, something that we haven't really done with this ordinance for, like everyone's saying, 20 years, 25 years, 30 years, whatever it might be. Continue time, and hopefully we can just all work together and move forward. So yeah. Next person, Councilman Neal, please.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. My concern is that we understand what we really mean, and I've said this for years. When we talk about when we really want to create equitable policy, per your comment, Mr. Chairman, everything was fine with this tow district, the way it was set up, as long as no one asked to be a part of the district. Those things that hadn't been touched 25 years, that was serving those who were being serviced, were fine. Now that we have Miss Carol Coleman Crane, who's been asking for 4 years, now we want to revise all this stuff, which is, it should be done. But I use the term, this legislation, if we're not careful, is inequitable just in the way it's been brought in. It's pretty much when what's happening now down south. We're still in a Jim Crow era. It's like when Black folks said, hey, we want to vote. All these different rules were thrown in to make it difficult for Black folks to have the opportunity to vote. We have a woman by Carol Coleman Crane who is asked to participate in the tow district. It's been 4 years. We pass legislation every week under emergency. What I would suggest is that we look at the proposal that came in from Ms. Samples today for revisions, because what we're talking about are healthy for upgrading and revising the tow districts, but it has nothing to address the question that was brought to us 4 years ago, which is participation. I would like for us to vote today to merge the two proposals and continue discussion. Understand, as you said, we're working together, which we should have done starting 4 years ago as council as a whole, when it was brought to us as council as a whole. That the first thing is that we move to one tow company per district. I saw the one email that came into you about the one company. I don't know how long they've had their tow district, but we cannot create an equitable opportunity for folks to participate if, without even having a contract or a way of forming an agreement, we just gift these to a company and never look at them again. That's why I appreciate what's coming in on this legislation, where we will now review them every so many years. But what I would like to see us do is address the matter at hand right now, which is to open up those other two tow districts. Then we can engage the tow companies and the other revisions that we want to make that were fine for the past 25 years. If they were good for 25 years, we can take time on those. But the one thing we cannot take time on any longer is the 4 years it has taken us to answer Ms. Coleman Crane's request. It's very simple. Are we going to create the 7 different tow districts, or are we going to allow 2 other companies to have those tow districts where they don't reside? To me, that's very easy for us. So again, I would like for us to take, if we're talking about merging these, the suggestion that came in from Ms. Samples is on point. doing away with the shared districts, allowing Kenny's and Team Towing to move into those other spots. And then we can continue to work on this other stuff. Like I said, that has been good for the past 25 years. But the question that brought us to the discussion is, again, the question that came from Ms. Carol Coleman Crane about being able to participate in the tow districts. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilman. I appreciate that. Next up is Councilman Freeman.
Hi, I've not been able to be in on the whole meeting. I apologize. So, but I do want to go back to and if this has been addressed, disregard everything I say. The idea of property. I think I'm the only council person that has gone through a company losing their work with the Army because they lost their property. So I would say, I do think that property ownership is important, but if we choose not to do that, I would say that there needs to be, if we're going 4 years, 5 years, that the owner of the company does need to have a lease in hand that says, yeah, we can cover that time. And I understand a couple companies, have 2 districts. I mean, the person that has my district right now, they waited for 20 years. They waited for 20 years. Somebody went off and they were brought in. So they waited for 20 years. So I understand the wait, but as it came in, they came in and they didn't come down and say, I want this. They waited for 20 years. But going back to the property, I do think there needs to be a lease in place that would cover the term that the company would have. If they don't own their property, the company would have proper space for us to store. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilman. I appreciate that. It seems like that discussion of the property being leased, rented, owned is a continued discussion among Jeff and I with the law department. And obviously that's a lot of several concerns from council members right here. So thank you. Councilman Malik.
I see that Mr. Fusco has his hand up, and I've already spoken once, so I'll defer to him.
I appreciate that. Thank you. I'll come back to you. Councilman Fusco.
Thank you, Chairman Kamer. The couple of things. It wasn't that long ago the council approved a tow district for one of the companies that purchased another company. This council, I believe, unanimously approved that. I don't know exactly what year that was, but it was within the last 10. I can tell you that. In terms of looking at the overall ordinance, which is what we're doing, is looking at the overall ordinance. And I can tell you, I thought we made this clear, and maybe, trying to make this very, very crystal clear. Please, everyone, please. We're receptive to hearing the ideas, receptive to, well, okay, how do we get past that, the ownership piece? Let's work together to try to figure that out, to open it up so that we can so we can receive proposals from as many companies as we possibly can to continue to deliver the services that we've had. It's the interruption of service is what we're trying to avoid. But this has taken quite a bit of heavy lifting by Councilman Kamer, and it's, let's come together, let's work this out together. And we're very receptive to working together to include as many possible companies as we can whenever we move forward. I hope we've made that clear. If we haven't, we want to make that very clear that we're receptive to maybe changing some of this and working together on it. I thought we said that last week. We just want to make sure everyone's very receptive to that. And we want to continue to hear everyone's input so we can work together on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. I'll go back to Councilman Malik, who yielded to you. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess, I think that this is a healthy debate and discussion. And, I do hope that we can find consensus, because, I think that this is, I think that's as valuable, the process is sometimes as valuable as the outcome, right? I guess with regard to Mr. Neal's points, I think that it's important that we make sure that the practices are not inequitable. I guess the concern that I have in the concern that I've had from the beginning is that I don't think that this body should necessarily be saying who goes in District 1 and who goes in District 2 and who goes in District 3. If it was totally up to me, that wouldn't be in the ordinance. That'd be up to the Police Towing Review Board. I have no problem with Kenny's or Team Towing being in there, but I really do think that should come at least as a recommendation from the Towing Review Board. With that being said, I think it's totally fair to point out that there are two companies that each have two districts. I think that we should look at whether that should not be permitted in the legislation, right? That the legislation might potentially say, no company may have more than one district. I think that, or each district will be at a different tow lot or whatever, however that's worded. But I think that would be one way of addressing the inequitable policies, to at least make sure that 7 companies get to compete for the 7 districts.
Thanks, Councilman. Good. Let's see. Councilwoman Omobian, apologize.
No problem. Thank you very much. Since we want to do this for the first time, I don't want to give the impression that I'm harming the existing towing districts, towing companies. So if we would like for them, the two that have two towing districts, to give up one and let them decide which one they want to give up, I have no problem with that. And then as we start this cycle of reviewing and bidding and all of that, then we can go through the process of, everybody start bidding from afresh, as opposed to starting out with the one they have. That's my thinking, because I never wanted to harm anybody, and I wanted people to know that. I just didn't think it was fair for anybody to have more than one towing district. Secondly, if there's a way to merge both of these, as suggested by Councilman Neal, I think that would be good. If Councilwoman Samples could sit down with Councilman Kamer and look at where the agreements are and merge, and then those areas that are not in agreement, we can continue to discuss those. It'll be nice just to have one piece of legislation that we are all talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And my third point I like to make is, I don't want the review of this legislation to give the impression that we're doing anything to make it difficult for new providers to come on board. So for some reason, I don't want people to get the impression that we looked at what you don't have and we decided to include it in the legislation as something you must have. Because the land piece, I think, can be addressed just by making sure they have a pretty solid agreement with whomever they are renting the property from, with some longevity and with enough time to look for additional space if for some reason this space became unavailable for some reason. So those are the kinds of things I would like us to take into consideration. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilwoman. And I'll just give another real brief comment. My purpose of this legislation, and I don't want to speak for my co-sponsor, but it's basically to move forward with a new plan and to be equitable, but also let the companies know, hey, you know what? There's other companies that are going to get involved and want to get involved and be part of this. And you might, like the two companies that have two districts, you're not going to have two districts moving forward, because this is a new plan and we're going to put this in place and we're going to be fair. So I'll come out right now and say that that's my goal with this piece of legislation, is to move forward, hopefully in 2022 with a new plan. And if it's 7 tow companies in 7 districts, there we go. We're moving forward. So let's see who else I have. Councilwoman Connor. And you're on mute, if you hear me.
I'm sorry. I would like to reiterate a little bit of what Councilwoman Amobian said. You know, it seems to me that in our effort to open this up, there needs to be a little time. Because who knows if there's an 8th company out there or a 9th company. So by giving it time to 22, we allow for them to come to the top also. If we just arbitrarily take 2 away and give 2, aren't we doing the same thing that was done years ago? And I don't think we all want to do that. So that's my only comment.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilwoman, I'll go back to Councilman Lombardo unless you want to yield to Councilwoman Samples because she has not spoke yet in regards to this topic.
Yes, that's fine. Go ahead, Councilwoman
Thank you.
Samples.
Councilwoman.
Thank you, Chairman Kamer. I think all the comments are duly noted, and I think that we are all really on the same page, but given it in our own terminology. I think we all want it to be fair and equitable. I do believe that when looking at both pieces of legislation, I think when we both talk about the districts and who they belong to and in our legislation, it looks as if one is keeping things the same and the other one looks as if we're just opening it up for 2 people. So I do agree with the merging and looking at them holistically and seeing where they can be reshaped and reformed. I do want to state for the record that I did spend quite some time this week speaking with Kenny's Automotive, and Brian really explaining to me this district, seeing his family has been in it for 52 years and how some of the things happened, even with the one that Councilman Freeman brought up about Osborne's towing and how that all transpired. I just want us to keep in consideration while we form this piece of legislation. There's been times when we have voted on businesses coming into the city without the formality of bidding. So I don't want it to appear and seem as if I'm asking for something that has not been done in the past, but this time with reviews. Should it be open for bids? Absolutely. I think that was one of the first things that was said the last time, but neither one of these legislative pieces acts for that. So maybe having a merge of them and having a conversation with one another, whether that's a special meeting where we all can have some input because we all have our different ideas about what we think it should look like and hashing those out as to what it should be like. So I'm okay with that. Again, Councilman Kamer is the chair, so it lies with him. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Councilwoman. I'll go back to Councilman Lombardo, then I have Councilman Neal on deck.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So good comments, but I guess I too don't want to harm any one of the existing companies. It just seems like, again, not having this legislation looked at for 30 some years, maybe it's, it's a step down program for some of these companies, being that we're trying to either increase districts, obviously be more equitable, but maybe it's something where, a certain district will take effect in 2022. Then in 2023, it's going to be another diagram, just so we can kind of step down to level the playing field, if you will. But I guess also I'm confused with the legislation, if we should vote on it, not that we are today, but are we saying in this piece of legislation, here are the 7 districts and here are the companies that represent this district? I mean, why do we say that in this piece of legislation if we're all trying to move towards a fair and equitable, towing proposal? So that's what I'm confused on this piece of legislation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Neal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. this discussion has really brought us back to, as council, we need to understand when we say, if I was to ask what equitable means amongst my colleagues here right now, I wonder how many different definitions would I get. Equitable does not mean equal. Equitable does not mean equal. My concern is, and this is a separate matter. I'm going to state this now, but we definitely need to look at why it's taken us even 4 years to get to this point of just having a discussion about this so that we can bring legislation forth to move this forward. Why has it taken us 4 years to get to this point? That's another matter that needs to be addressed, because it shows up as so many issues that come before us where we don't have discussion. But that point, I'm going to put a bullet point there. I want to come back to this point. I want us to put I don't want to see us waiting another month, 2 months to address the very simple question: are we going to honor the request for team towing? That's simple, folks. We don't have to complicate that. We can put something out about other companies that may be interested. But again, this has been going on for 4 years. It's not like those in the tow district have known about this. Others that would have been interested would have reached out. The only two that have reached out have been Team Towing and Kitties. I got my first call from another district that had some interest actually last night. But I don't want us to, and again, we have to look at our whole legislative process. Let's deal with the issue at hand. Let's not bog it down. Although these other things are good, they do not speak to the initial request. And we can address that and still work on these others. And that is, are we going to allow team towing to participate in the tow district that's in that area? I think we've all agreed now that no tow district should be owned, no tow company should own 2 districts. And then we can continue to work on that other piece. I just don't want us to continue to kicking this can down the road, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. I'll just briefly say before I call on somebody else, that's why I really want the council members, and I don't think we have too many concerns about it, is the Police Towing and Review Board, something I've been on as your public safety chairperson since 2013, that we're asking them as council in this legislation to step up, do more, do their part, make those recommendations to us, hold these tow companies more accountable, and et cetera. And I really think the powers and duties under 70.55 Police Towing Review Board is really important piece to this moving forward, by them being more involved, because I'm on that committee, and I'll say it right now publicly. I think we need to be more involved, and I've been on it since 2013. All right, Councilman Fusco, you're next, and I got Councilman McKittrick.
Thank you, Chairman Kamer. Yeah, beginning January of 22, we're going to open this up, okay? And I think we got to be somewhat leery about, trying, and Ms. Amobi, I believe, said that, about trying to curtail something to fit something. And that's why this is so hard and why it's taken a long time to do. However, what we're doing here now is called transparency. We're trying to include other voices whenever you talk about the towing review board, getting recommendations from them. They're the ones who deal with this on a quarterly basis. APD deals with it on a daily basis. So obviously getting their input is vital, very important. But like I said, in terms of the ownership piece, let's work through it and let's figure that part out. It's just the interruption of service that we really got to avoid. And that's the biggest piece. And we've been burnt by that before. Like I said, we're in Kenmore, we saw that. Also, I believe that the reason why is because we were neglectful, Akron City Council, because we voted 7-8 years ago on allowing another company to come in. But with this legislation here, we can make sure that one company can't hold 2 districts. And I think that's where, because those 2 situations ended up in court. And that's what we want to try to do and get, that input from the law department, obviously. But like I said, just very, very receptive in terms of trying to work through all these things. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman McKittrick.
Councilman McKittrick, you're muted. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple things I want to touch on. My concern, we're hearing colleagues talking about that they don't want to adversely affect any of the existing companies. My question would be, the companies that do have 2 districts, if one of those districts is taken away, are we going to see that they're going to have to lay off employees because they have half the volume that goes out of the business? And are they going to have to sell possibly equipment that they won't need because they've acquired this to be able to accommodate 2 districts? So I think those are things that really need to be looked at, that if we're talking about equity, that we're not going to adversely affect a business that's operating as of now. The other thing that I think needs to be considered, Mr. Ballman might be able to expand on this, is it's just not the continuous of service, but many of these vehicles are pieces of evidence from crime scenes and so on. And there is a chain of custody when it comes to pieces of evidence. And I think that goes along with the ownership of property and making sure that there's not going to be a problem that these have to be moved, and it may cause an issue where suddenly that won't be admitted into an actual trial because it's not been properly kept in the line of evidence that it needs to be kept in. And so that's my concern with the possibility of not owning the property and getting evicted, is that keeping that evidence. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. I do have a few others, but everyone please watch the time. I know we have another committee meeting. Councilman Neal, please.
Ms. Samples was before me, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, okay. Councilwoman Samples.
Just briefly, I don't know if you or Councilman Fusco can tell me where in the legislation he said that it says that they would open the districts in 2022. I see where it talks about he has to have a 25-ton wrecker. I see where it talks about storage, and it talks about closing, but I don't see where it says it would be open. We were opening it up. I'm not saying it's not there. I just don't know where it's at.
So, Councilwoman, it'd probably be under K, where it says beginning in the year 2022.
Okay, I see it. Okay. And then lastly, I do believe I have probably just came on council when we approved another towing company coming in. But the problem is, if they're not sharing the same name, how would we have known they were the same people? And I think that's where the issue is coming in at, especially when we talk about opening it up and being fair and equitable, where you have Bowers and Wilsons are the same people. You got Johnny's. Well, Johnny's is a big company. They have Interstate, but that's out in Twinsburg. But then you have Greg's and Bondurant. They're the same owners, same addresses. So when it came in, it probably of course, it would have been an oversight from anyone on council because it's not the same name, same address, but not the same name. So I just encourage council to just reach out to the other 20 people. I should too, so we can get some clarity on some things, because after talking to Kenny's, I definitely need to reach out to Wilson's and Bondurant, because I do have some questions and some concerns. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Councilwoman. I'm glad you're going to reach out to them. And I do know the clerk's office, and I don't want to send it because I do have it in my hand here, but I'll let somebody request it from Sarah or Holly. If I believe correctly, 2004 when Bill Wilson's and Bowers merged. I'll use the word merged right now. That did come for council approval, and then 2011 was I'm sorry. 2004 was Bondurant and Greg's. 2011 was Bowers and Wilson's, and that came before council for approval. And then 2017 was when Johnny sold to Interstate, and that came for council approval. But that's not a company that has two districts. But I'll let somebody make that request, Sarah or Holly, if you want to see that legislation. All right, moving along. Councilman Neal, you still?
Yes, sir. Yeah,
Okay.
thank you. I just want to remind council, I'm glad Councilwoman Samples spoke to the fact when this came in the past, it wasn't that council was being negligent. We did not know. We know now. Also, Lieutenant Simcox let us know this is a council's wheelhouse to address this issue. I understand my one colleague feeling maybe it should be someone else, but those other people aren't elected to represent the people. We are. And some of those decisions are tough. And when we don't have insight, what we do is we go outside and we get information. It would be good as we go through this to hear from the tow districts and hear their part, because they should have a say. But we're the ones that are elected to make the decisions. The other thing is this. Again, it's important that we understand what equitable means. I want to do right by the companies, but I can tell you when they made equitable legislation and put in a policy with Title IX for colleges, there were a lot of young men that lost scholarships because they had to make it equitable for young ladies to be able to participate in sports. I believe University of Akron lost its wrestling program, lost its baseball program for some time. It lost a lot of scholarships. Folks, that's why it's critical for us to understand. When we talk about making equitable decisions, there are some tough decisions that have to be made. This one right here, again, all the changes for the policy, we could do our part, have input from the tow countries, but the one issue that brought before us, is an easy one. It is simple. It's just a matter of understanding math. You got 7 districts, 5 companies. Now, what are we going to do? So, I don't, like I said, there are other things that we have dealt with that as a council, we have to look at our practice and procedure for dealing with issues that come before us, because this kind of discussion right here is healthy. But why it took us 4 years to get to it is a big concern, and it's raised its head in other issues as well. So I just want to, I'd like for us to give ourselves a tight deadline to deal with this, because I know it was over a year ago I asked us to look at it, and that was after it being a couple years. We've had enough time. I think we can make a decision on if we're going to add 2 more tow companies, and we could all that other stuff. We took 25 years to get here. If we need to take another, well, none of us were here. Well, I don't think any of us were here 25 years ago. But we could take time to work on that other stuff. But the question that even brought us to this discussion, we can handle right now. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you, Councilman. Moving forward, before we continue to take time on this, I'm asking my colleagues to please reach out to at least one or two tow companies. Sarah hopefully can get you those contacts. And I'll be honest, some of these companies might not be on board with some of the stuff I'm proposing. Some of the stuff came from other cities where, I looked at officer safety, public safety, firefighters, and then obviously motorist safety. And I was like, ooh, I like this. I'm going to try to put this in here. But I think we're on the right track. I think Shamus, Councilman Malik, has a couple good things that and Phil Lombardo that we can change. But just let's take the week time, continue taking time working together. But please reach out to one or two of these companies to see where they're at, and we can continue moving forward. Let me just double check, make sure there's no hands raised. All right, so we'll continue time on this. We'll discuss it more later on. Moving on to the next piece that was on the old agenda. It's the resolution that was brought in by Councilwoman Samples, urging the Ohio General Assembly to adopt legislation prohibiting the use of death penalty in the state of Ohio and declare an emergency. Councilwoman, what would you like?
I'd like to move forward on this. I would like to say, I do know there's another piece that's coming in behind this one on putting it on the ballot, which I was very surprised by, but I mean, everybody's entitled to their opinion. The bottom line to this resolution, you're either for the death penalty or not. No one has reached out to Representative Galansky. I have spoken with her. She says she has not heard from anyone in this regard. The statistics speak for themselves. The research speaks for itself. It costs over $1 million to put someone to death here in the state of Ohio. Once you add up all the fees and the costs of the appeals and them being housed, there's a vast monetary difference in housing someone for life and putting them to death. I don't want to speak to the other resolution because I do have some comments that I would like to say over there, but I want to move forward with this piece. I just firmly believe that it's really hard to be pro-life and pro-death penalty. It just doesn't make sense, and that's just my opinion. So I am asking for us to move forward with this.
Okay. Thank you, Councilwoman. Before I ask for a vote, I did reach out to my state representative, Tavia Glonsky, by phone, and I do have the documentation of my phone call to her with the recording that I still have an unreturned phone call from her. So moving forward, I don't know if we have a recommendation for this piece. Councilman Malik.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I just want to echo, what Ms. Sample said. I mean, obviously, everyone is entitled to their own opinion, and I respect that there are strong opinions on this issue, particularly, right? It deals with very weighty issues of violence and of, kind of what the government should be doing. But ultimately, I think that, what we're seeing in Columbus from a bipartisan team is what we're seeing across the nation, which is death penalty doesn't work, that it has pretty clear racial disparities, and ultimately costs the government a whole lot of money as well. So ultimately, for that reason, I'm going to support this resolution. So I would make a motion to suspend the rules with a favorable report.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Oh, Phil, you're not on the committee. So I have a motion by Councilman Malik, a second by Councilman Samples. I'm going to go ahead and vote just to get this out of the committee, but I will say that I am against this resolution because my name is on the other resolution. But to get it out of the committee so all of council can have it say, I will vote to get it out of the committee. So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Okay, Sarah, let's just do a roll call,
I was just going
please.
to say, I'm not sure I heard everyone, so do you mind if I do a roll call on that one?
Yeah, please.
Kamer,
Aye.
Samples,
Aye.
Malik,
Aye.
McKittrick.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes 4-0.
All right. Thank you, and we'll vote on that this evening. All right, we'll
Mr.
move
Chair.
on to our. Oh yes.
I see that I believe Mr. Freeman has his hand up.
Oh sure, Councilman Freeman. Thank you,
Hey, yeah, you took the vote. That's fine. I just have to address the one thing that I heard a moment ago, that how can anyone that's pro-life be in favor of the death penalty? And so I want to address that, because on one hand, we're dealing with an innocent child in a womb. The other hand, we're dealing with somebody who has taken a life. So that would be kind of the groundwork for me between the two, being pro-life and yet thinking that perhaps we should not do away with the death penalty. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Freeman. Thank you for recognizing him, Malik. All right, we do have one new piece in front of us. That's our old business. Moving on to our new business. It's a resolution offered by, I'm going to go ahead and read all the sponsors just for the record. It's offered by President Somerville, Vice President Fusco, Councilwoman Baylor, Councilman Lombardo, Councilman McKittrick, Councilman Kamer, Councilman Freeman, and Councilwoman Connor. It's urging the state of Ohio to place the issue of the death penalty on the ballot of the next general election, so that the voters may decide whether the death penalty should be prohibited and declare an emergency. And I'll call on leadership first. I'll take questions from the committee first. I apologize. Unless the any co-sponsors want to speak.
Yeah,
I was going to defer to Councilman Fusco first.
All right, Councilman Fusco.
thank you, President Somerville and Chair Kamer. Yeah, just, this is, and I appreciate Samples bringing this in. Last week, give it a lot of thought. Like I said, it's a weighty issue. And the racial disparity, that's, again, something that, needs to be in the public domain, discussed, shared, and people need to be educated on that. But with respect to our General Assembly in the state of Ohio, I believe that this decision ought to be made by the voters of Ohio and not the General Assembly, with all respect to them. This is a tough issue. And that's why I brought this in. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councilman. Councilwoman Somerville, do you have any questions before I call on anyone else for comments?
Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to speak in favor of this resolution. Again, we just talked about how personal this issue is and this decision. And I'm just wondering, I don't know if Councilman Fusco is open to maybe amending or placing in our resolution that we urge a conversation, right, to talk about the issues in terms of racial disparity and those issues. If we can just add that into the resolution, because I think that is very important and there needs to be a conversation. I think just for me, I'm just uncomfortable making that personal decision on behalf of, all of my constituents. I'm grateful that my constituents place me and allow me to do so. But again, our real vote should be focused towards, policy as it relates to the city of Akron, how dollars are being spent. This one is just very, very personal. And I know people who have been affected by death in a horrible way, horrific way. And it's a tough decision. And I just personally don't go making that decision from my seat as a Ward 3 councilperson or president of council. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilwoman.
If I could real quick, Mr. Kamer, in terms of that amendment piece, would be happy to work with the president with regards to that.
Okay, thank you, Councilman. Councilwoman Samples.
Thank you, Chairman Kamer. Sometimes I think we are put in a position to make hard decisions as it relates to certain aspects within the ordinance, within the law. And this, unfortunately, is one of those moments. When I think about what happened in California under Proposition 34 and how much money was spent by taxpayers putting this on the ballot, it concerns me that we would ask voters in the midst of the pandemic to pay their tax dollars for something that we all who have been elected to make those hard decisions do not want to make. According to Ballotpedia, California spent almost $3 million just on the initiative part, of putting something like this on the ballot. Again, sometimes we have to make those tough decisions, and this is one of them. I sent you all an email over the weekend where they lay it out as to why the death penalty should be abolished. Not only in our state, but honestly, federally should be abolished. We have a lot of issues that we are burdened with here, not just in our city, but in our state. We can't ask our taxpayers to handle the things that we are handling and should be handling. There's a lot of things that should be on the ballot that they should be handling. I don't believe this is one of them. You know, what else are we going to give to the taxpayers to handle for us? Are we going to ask them to vote on who we should put in the towing district? Should we ask them if we should have term limits? Should we ask them, do we argue? I mean, it just makes no sense to me. I respectfully say I won't support this, but I respect you all in your opinions. We have been placed in these positions and elected to make those hard decisions, and this is one of them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilman Neal?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for recognizing me. Again, this makes me question us as a council. The way this legislation came in, it makes me question us as a council on our true ability to legislate collaboratively. But this is the point I want to make. There is overwhelming data that shows how many folks, and you know what, sometimes I feel I shouldn't say this, but in today's climate, I got to say it, that look like me, that have been wrongfully murdered because they were wrongfully incarcerated, put on death row without proper representation. If one life is lost that way, it's too much. We're not saying let's do away with the death penalty and let them come out and get out. They're incarcerated for life. One life. I gave you an example of right here in the city of Akron, how at that time it was a magistrate and 2 judges withheld evidence that later exonerated a young man, but he had to lose 7 years of his youth because they withheld information. And it was for rape. He was wrongfully accused of rape. What if that young man would have lost his life? You know what he did? He lost 7 years. So I'm going to ask, like council has the right. I think it would be good. This is a piece that would be great to take to, we are members of the Ohio Municipal League. Take it to the Ohio Municipal League. Let's talk with our colleagues across. And if they're willing to bear the brunt of the cost, let's put it before the voters. So I'm not saying dismiss this one, but I'm saying the one that's before us right now could save a life, initiate discussion that could lead to saving a life right away. Because we know by the time it takes time to get something on the ballot, and because of the cultural climate within the State House, it could be years before it even gets on the ballot. But right now we have the ability to send a message saying down that we recognize the inequities in our judicial system. And because of that reason, we are against the death penalty. Because of those inequities that I don't think any of us, no matter where our level of understanding of what inequity is, I think we all know about the racial disparities that run throughout our judicial system. So for that reason, looking at these 2 pieces, I'm saying if my colleagues truly believe in this, Ohio Municipal League is a place to take this legislation because of the cost that it will take for our state to do this, and talk to our colleagues throughout other cities, towns, and villages. But right now, I don't think any of us could say that we don't understand the inequities that exist in our judicial system, and that by passing the legislation brought in by Ms. Samples, how that could save a life. I gave you an example of something that happened right here in our city. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilman. Thank you. Councilman Malik.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I again just want to be very clear at the outset that this is a weighty issue, and I respect all my colleagues' views and thoughts on this. As for my perspective, I know that in 1972 the U.S. Supreme Court invalidated the death penalty as cruel and unusual punishment under the Eighth Amendment. They as lawyers, they were kind of difficult though, because they said in the way that it was applied. And so 4 years later, it was reinstated, right? And has proceeded ever since. And I guess to me, that kind of speaks to part of the issue, because throughout that time and until now, I think death penalty has still been fairly popular with the public, right? But as I think Councilwoman Samples made the point as well, on some issues, when it comes especially to fundamental rights, we are put in a position where sometimes either legislators or courts make decisions that the majority of public might not agree with to protect the rights of someone who might be unfairly executed, or someone who we want to make sure they have the freedom to marry, or the right to have an abortion, or what have you. Those are all issues on which public opinion does not necessarily totally in line with the law of the land in all cases. And so for that reason, I'm not going to support this resolution. I think the death penalty should be invalidated. With that being said, Mr. Chair, you did support the previous resolution going to the floor, and I will do that as well in recognition that most of my colleagues would like to vote in favor of this.
All right, thank you, Councilman. I'll go ahead. I see Councilwoman Samples' hands up. I'll defer to her, then I got a couple comments. Go ahead, Councilwoman.
I just wanted to echo what Councilman Malik said. I will, in the spirit of this resolution, vote to take it to a full vote. I think that everyone should have their say. My opinion is my opinion, but you all have your own as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. The reason I support this resolution is it gives everybody a voice. Everyone does have an opinion. It also brings in the opportunity for the victims' families throughout the state of Ohio to have a voice and to weigh in. I also don't support the other piece because it seems like it's both of these really don't have much to do with the city business that we have here in council, but it seems like the other piece was we're carrying water for our state representatives. So moving forward, I appreciate all the comments in regards to this and the discussion, and I'll open it up to the committee I know Councilman Malik was the first to raise his opinion about supporting this to move it forward. And I'll let you, if you want, make that motion.
Motion for suspension of the rules with a favorable report.
All right, thank you. And I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Sarah, I think you heard everybody. You can do a roll call if you want. It's up to you.
Sure. Kamer,
Aye.
Samples,
Aye.
Malik,
Aye.
McKittrick.
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0.
Thank you, everyone. That was a good, healthy debate on all pieces. And with that, we're adjourned. Thank you.
Okay, we'll move right into the Budget and Finance Committee, which is the last committee for today. Those committee members are Freeman, Amobian, Malik, Baylor, and Lombardo. Looks like all members are present. Yes, we have everyone. So we're ready whenever you are, Mr. Chair.
Okay, very good. All right, let's go ahead with the roll call, Sarah.
Sure. Freeman,
Aye?
Amobian,
Aye.
Malik,
Aye.
Baylor,
Aye.
Lombardo.
Aye.
All committee members are present.
Thank you. And looking for a motion to suspend or motion to accept the minutes from the last meeting.
So move.
So move. Second.
Okay, we have motion second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you. Sarah, if you would go ahead and please, I'm going to have to ask you to read in the piece for me.
Sure. Are you taking time on the regular agenda?
Yes.
The stuff for budget this week? Okay.
Yes.
Just making sure. Yep. Ordinance authorizing, this is item number 1 under new legislation. Ordinance authorizing the Director of Finance to enter into an agreement or agreements with AT&T Corp. For the provision of wireless services and equipment for a 3-year term and declaring an emergency.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is a 3-year agreement with AT&T. This is a renewal of our existing agreement, which covers all of our wireless devices that we have throughout the city. So we, as I said, we had a previous 3-year agreement that expired at the end of the year. They've been allowing us to continue on a month-to-month basis, but we do need a new renewal agreement. So this agreement was actually negotiated through the National Association of State Procurement Officials. So it's a multi-state agreement, and we got the pricing with AT&T through that agreement. So like I said, this covers all of our wireless equipment. It's not just our cell phones, but it's all of the other wireless equipment we use, like within the police department, the fire department. Our service department has a number of devices. So it basically covers all that equipment. We do have, if there's any questions, we do have Malcolm Valentine, who's our communications manager, that can answer any technical questions about the services and the equipment that we have.
Okay, very good. Ms. Samobian, I see a hand.
Yes, I spoke with Mr. Fricker earlier today. Now, this is 3 divided into this figure. Is that correct?
Yes, this is a 3-year agreement. So the amount on the Uniform Council report is for the entire agreement.
And if we had gone solo, I'm sure it would have been much higher in terms of bidding for
Probably. I
this.
mean, the pricing that was negotiated, right? It typically, you get better pricing if you negotiate a multi-year agreement than if you do a single-year agreement.
I'm speaking of the group that we did this with, the association.
Oh, correct. Yes. Yes. So we got, pricing that was negotiated for a number of, government entities throughout a multi-state region. So, yeah, we got better pricing through that agreement.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions or comments? Looking around to see. Sarah, am I missing anyone?
I do not see any hands raised.
Okay. So any other questions or comments? Mr. Valentine, thank you for your work.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right. Mr. Fricker, tell me about the timing on this. Do we need?
Consent agenda should be fine.
Okay, then. So I'd entertain a motion for consent.
So move.
Second.
And we have a motion and a second for consent. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, very good. I believe I heard everyone. All right. Thank you so much again, Mr. Valentine. Thank you for your work. And we will place this item on the consent agenda. And I do not believe we have anything else coming before us. Am I correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Okay, we will adjourn at 3:29. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank
bye-bye.
you.
This is our final committee meeting of the day. Council will meet at 7 p.m.